Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another field strip video. And today's field strip is going to be on the B&T SPC10, a 10mm pistol caliber carbine from B&T. This is going to be the full-sized pistol, and yes, I do have a pistol brace on this, and that is because as I am filming this, we are in a post-injunction world on the ATF pistol brace rule, so this firearm is allowed to have that pistol brace on it. So I'm just trying to future-proof this video. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, of course, as always, is drop the magazine, ensure that there is no ammunition in there. We'll set that aside. Then we will safety check the firearm. We will ensure that there is no ammunition in it. Visually inspect that chamber. It looks like we are good to go. Then we will put the gun on safe if it isn't already there. The first thing we're going to need is going to be a little punch, and that's because sometimes these pins and the B&T lower receivers are in there a little bit tight. And we're going to go ahead and punch those out, the front and the rear. Go to the other side of the firearm and pull those pins all the way out. And now we should be able to separate our lower from our upper receiver. And there we go. We can set that lower receiver aside. Now the next thing we're going to do is pull out the rear end. This is where we have the hydraulic buffer, and this is the part of the SPC that is most like the AR-15 and definitely a little bit different than most of the other guns in B&T's lineup, because this does require the use of a buffer tube, whether or not you have a stock or a pistol brace on it. We will take this down a little bit further in just a moment. Then we will go to the upper receiver. We will pull back on the charging handle and pull out the bolt right there, and pull out the charging handle as well. And that pretty much is a standard field strip. However, I do want to go a little bit more in depth for cleaning. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the quick detach aim point acro optic, and we're going to go to the front of the upper here. You will need an Allen wrench for this. You need to double check which size is the correct one for your gun. We were going to take off the handguard, and we do that by removing this screw right here. There's a nut on the other side, and once it comes out far enough, it will simply just fall out like that. We can pull out the screw, and then the whole handguard will come off the upper receiver. Now, if you want to get the charging handle out, you can only get this off with the handguard off. We can pull this all the way back to the disassembly notch. We can pull out on that lever and pull out the rest of the apparatus. So we can set that aside. And now our upper receiver is completely stripped. Now let's go to the buffer system and the buffer tube, and we're going to remove the buffer system and the action spring, and there's going to be a little screw here on the bottom. We're going to take that Allen wrench we used earlier, and we're going to put a little bit of pressure on that buffer. We can now release this, and you don't have to turn it too far, and that's going to be enough for us to release the buffer itself. We can pull out the action spring, and there's going to be a little spacer there at the end, and all these things can come apart very easily. And of course, if you wanted to, if you have a stock or a brace, you can simply pull up on that and pull the brace off of the buffer tube. And that is a completely field stripped and possibly a little bit more detail stripped B&T SPC10. All right, so let me get this gun cleaned up and let's put it back together. Alright, so we got this gun all cleaned up and ready to go back together. We're going to start with the upper receiver and the handguard. We're going to put the charging handle assembly back together. You'll notice that there's a little ball detent on the top. That has to go towards the top of the firearm. We can insert it through the rear of the handguard. Then we can reinsert the charging handle, slide that all the way forward. Then we can slide that onto the upper receiver. Everything should line up. We'll put that screw back in through the handguard and the nut on the other side. And then we'll take that little Allen wrench we had earlier and retighten this. You don't want to go too tight, just a nice finger tight should be just fine. We will then insert the charging handle in the rear and the bolt, and that should all slide back in together. just like that. We're now going to go back to the rear end of the gun and the buffer tube assembly. We're going to go ahead and put that brace back on the buffer tube. We will then take the recoil spring assembly or the action spring assembly. We will put that onto that spacer. We will insert that into the buffer tube. And then we're going to take the hydraulic buffer, making sure that this channel that is milled out in the bottom is facing downward. And we will insert that into the buffer tube. You have to put some pressure on that and be very, very careful not to let that go, or it's going to go flinging across the room. You got to get that channel lined up with that screw, and then tighten that screw down. And once it is in, it should be retained inside that buffer tube. And it looks like we are good. The next thing we're going to do is put that rear piece into the upper receiver. Of course, make sure that the takedown holes all line up. We will then put the lower receiver. I got to punch out those pins once more. And then we will put the lower on the upper receiver. Slide everything on. Then you're going to have to put some rearward pressure on that rear piece, and that will allow you to put that pin all the way through. And this can be a little bit on the tight side. It went through just fine there. Go to the other side, push that pin through. Looks like we are good. We'll reinsert the magazine, and I will reattach the optic with the quick detach lever. Then of course we're going to do a function check. The bolt holds open on the magazine. Looks like we're good. Let's take the gun off safe, and the trigger works. Looks like we are good to go, and the gun is back together. So that is how you field strip and partially detail strip a B&T SPC10. I hope this video helps somebody in the future, and as always, thanks for watching.